Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Fallout New Vegas on Xbox 360. I've spoken a bit at this point about the quality and issues surrounding Bethesda's games. But today's game represents an unusual turn of events. It hands a Bethesda-owned property back into the hands of the developers who worked on the original game, but with Bethesda oversight. Did it work? Should you care? Let's talk about it. Today we discuss 2010's Fallout New Vegas. And once again I'm bringing back the problematic favorite label for New Vegas. However, this time it's really more of a black and white issue with New Vegas's issues. But some background before we get into the nitty-gritty. In my review of Fallout 3, I explained that the Fallout franchise was once the domain of Interplay Game Studio, but they had had quite a bit of financial trouble that led them to selling off quite a lot of their properties, and Bethesda Game Studio scooped up the Fallout sequel named Van Buren. They rebuilt it from an isometric CRPG into a first-person action RPG that met with smashing success despite a heap of problems. Rather than sit on their laurels, Bethesda moved quickly on the franchise and contacted Obsidian Entertainment, who specializes in RPGs, contracting them to create a Fallout side story. Now, the funny thing about that, the founders of Obsidian once worked for Black Isle Studios, who worked for Interplay and helped create the original Fallout 1 and 2. Quite literally, Bethesda gave them their property back, but with all the assets that Bethesda had created during the development of Fallout 3. Assets that had taken for years to create, and then demanded that Obsidian would turn them around into a game in a mere 18 months. You heard me correctly. And that is where the story of Fallout New Vegas begins. You play as the Courier, a build-your-own adventurer from a pile of facial characteristics and identity disorders, every person. The game begins with your own execution at the hands of a New Vegas gang led by a man named Benny, who takes your package, a strange platinum chip, from you before putting a bullet through your head and burying you. But your story does not end there. There is a robot who digs you up and delivers you to the town of Good Springs, Nevada, where you are resuscitated by a local doctor. However, you do suffer from some sort of amnesia, because you cannot recall who you were other than Courier, and that the man who did this was Benny. From here, your character decides to find this Benny for revenge and answers, but almost immediately you are confronted by the biggest truth of New Vegas: politics. The Courier, it turns out, wandered themselves into the midst of an oncoming war. Whoever controls New Vegas and the Hoover Dam controls the Mojave Desert. There are three major players in this conflict. The New California Republic, the government of California over 100 years after the events and the decisions of the Vault Dweller from the Fallout 1. Caesar's Legion, a massive tribal band fashioning themselves after the Empire of Rome and all that entails, usually bloodshed and slavery. And Mr. House, the mysterious warlord of New Vegas, whose army of robots and gangster-controlled gambling houses stays neutral, until they do not. There are smaller players, of course, who are picking sides in the coming conflict, such as the Great Khans, who are on the run from California, the Brotherhood of Steel, who are in free fall after failing to control California, and the Boomers, Air Force wannabes who control the big guns at Nellis Air Force Base and keep strangers away from nearby Lake Mead. The war for New Vegas would bring the victor two things: all of Mr. House's hidden technology from before the nuclear war, and the millions of gallons of fresh water in Lake Mead. The key to victory is that very platinum chip, which it turns out is the key to a hidden war chest of House. House lost it and wanted it back, and the other two wanted to turn the tide of battle. And only the Courier knew anything about it, but thanks to Benny, they cannot recall why. The Mojave Wasteland is a barren place, primarily because it is the deserts outside of old Las Vegas, but also because there was only so much Obsidian could do in 18 months. We'll circle back to that. However, what it does tell is an amazingly woven story, following a trail of breadcrumbs you actually want to follow, as opposed to just wanting to get to the best bits once you know the story beats. You can certainly follow the obvious trail of revenge to Benny's doorstep, but there are just so many secrets dotted around the map to lead to mini tales and side quests as grand as the main plot itself. You can endear yourself to half a dozen factions within the game, each of whom is critical to the finale, the game, and gets their own role in the events of New Vegas once the courier's tale is done. You can upset, offend, placate, and schmooze any side at any time, changing loyalties at the drop of a hat. And just because you may recover the platinum chip does not mean you get locked into one of three endings, because even then, new faces reveal themselves and put plans into motion that can turn the tide for any of these three major factions. Whether that is to betray them or to ally with them is up to you. And it adds a fourth hidden player to the mix. New Vegas adds some other interesting ideas that developers had been holding on to since their days working for Interplay, such as buying weapon modifications, which would be seen again in Fallout 4, as well as the reputation and faction system, which they wanted to add to Fallout 2, but were not able to do at the time with the technology. The courier can have up to 2 companions, and every one of them feels like a real person, rather than a dead-eyed, bog-standard Bethesda pack mule store arm. Amazing standout characters like Raoul the Ghoul, who's worried about his advanced age, Veronica of the Brotherhood of Steel, Scribe, disowned because she's a lesbian, vengeful and alcoholic caravanner Rose of Sharon Cassidy, the daughter of one of the main character companions from Fallout 2, even expressive and floating robot EDE, who communicates through static and ghostly radio signals. There are more companions than these, but these are just my favorites. They are so well written and acted that I came to see this group as more than just war buddies, but friends, someone to depend on in the hot and radioactive wastes of the Mojave. Oh, don't worry, I've got more praises to sing about New Vegas, but I have to get on with other things. Fallout New Vegas is just a game that should not work for how much is crammed into it in such a short period of time, and in truth, it almost doesn't. The launch of New Vegas was an absolute disaster. Games broke down, froze consoles and PCs alike, and was horribly unoptimized to run on, well, anything. It broke in the games press how badly things were going, and quickly threats of lawsuits by Bethesda to Obsidian began to circulate. Patches were released by Obsidian as fast as possible, fixing hundreds of quests and scripting errors, and even more were issued in the weeks following the launch, provided you had reliable internet access. While PC and Xbox 360 versions were made playable, PS3 owners were up shit's creek, because there were fundamental flaws to the core of the game design that caused a host of problems on that console the developers simply could not be easily patched. But the game recovered, if slowly, based on the strength of the story and quests, not the mechanics. It has obtained a strong cult status, many saying this may be the best Fallout in the franchise, and I'm inclined to agree. Oh, what's that? Oh, look, kids, the Caveat Express is rolling into station. Let's get to the issues. As I have said, this game is a problematic favorite. I've spent hundreds of hours wandering the Mojave, playing and replaying missions, finding new things, and tackling old mysteries in new ways. But honestly, the game's biggest weakness is that it's so fucking empty. Yes, it is the desert, and living in the Southwest, I can tell you that there is not much going on between deliberate points of human habitation. But when there is a place, it is packed with color, life, and vibrancy, which New Vegas is not. Even in the big cities, it is just empty, festooned with 200-year-old wreckage in the wake of the apocalypse of 2077. It is painfully obvious that there was intent to make so much more out of this, but Bethesda was too busy building Skyrim to spend much time on New Vegas, other than to demand that Obsidian not fuck it up in a turnaround time that by modern standards should be impossible, if not dangerous, to the developers. Obsidian had the sword of Damocles over it, and Bethesda was going to drop it on their heads, no matter how well they performed. But some other odd things creep in to make the experience just a bit bizarre. For a game loaded with politics, both cultural, religious, and statecraft politics, there is a little less nuance than one could expect in such cases. Some of it is sadly blunt, despite the care of the craft placed on the writing, and certain quests and groups, like the Powder Gangers or the Gun Runners, simply don't go anywhere. As with Fallout 3, the soundtrack is loaded with public domain country hits of the 1950s and some general doo-wop and Motown songs. But there are the two biggest Vegas-related music acts synonymous with all things Las Vegas that Bethesda failed to get: the estates of Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. There are obvious allusions to both famed performers within New Vegas, but in the case of both estates, they were offended by the violence, politics, and cussing within the game, and refused to allow the songs of their dead singers to be used. And to be honest, the game is poorer for it. As a side note, New Vegas does boast a wealth of Hollywood voice talent in the game. Actors such as Matthew Perry, Danny Trejo, Chris Christopherson, and Felicia Day, among others, star as characters within the game. Hell, they even got Wayne Newton to voice Mr. New Vegas, the radio DJ. If we can't have Elvis and Old Blue Eyes, at least we can have Wayne. The DLC, integral to the telling of the New Vegas tale, is horribly uneven in quality. Dead Money is, in my opinion, the best of the four, like Point Lookout was for Fallout 3. It has you fighting for your life inside a sealed casino, with a deadly poison spewing out into the village around it, and eventually the wasteland, and you have to commit post-apocalyptic bank heist to get it to stop. Old World Blues is a boring trek through a sci-fi 1950s horror movie where brains and jars have pulled out yours and make you slog through facility after facility until you pick a side. Honest Hearts has you trek north into Zion National Park in Utah, where tribals are deciding who will rule the wastes between New Vegas and Interstate 80, and one man, the former right-hand assassin of Caesar, has had a literal change of heart, becoming the Latter-day Saint of Zion with a .45 pistol in each hand. Believe me, the elevator pitch sounds amazing, but the actual DLC is as dull as dishwater. And I didn't even try the final DLC of Lonesome Road, and I don't think I ever will. By the time I got to this point, I was just done with New Vegas. Just absolutely done. Done with the updates, the patches, the bugs, the crashes. Done with the bullshit in the game and the hoopla outside of it. Which is a damn shame, as there is so much good here, and so much I absolutely loved. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent so much time with it. I cannot blame Obsidian for these issues. The fault rests in Bethesda's hands for all the problems this game had. For what we got in such a short time was a minor fucking miracle. But as this is a problematic favorite, I simply cannot recommend Fallout New Vegas to new players in 2022 in its unpatched, out-of-the-box state. Thankfully, the modding scene for New Vegas on PC is almost as robust and active as Skyrim's, with new mods being produced even to this day. People do love this game, and rightfully so, but again, we should not have to rely on unpaid modders to fix problems or enrich an empty setting. This is another one where it's best if you mod the shit out of it and don't worry about completing it. I haven't, and I'm a happier person for it. Also, do what an old buddy of mine did. Cue up some of Frank Sinatra's greatest hits on your favorite music player and let it run in the background of the game. You'll thank me for it later. As of time of this recording, Microsoft has purchased both Obsidian Entertainment and Bethesda Game Studios. Hell, they even have In Exile Entertainment, the remainder of Fallout's creative team from the old days, under their belt. Fans want a New Vegas 2, and Obsidian said they would be happy to go back. All they need is for Bethesda to say yes. So far, Bethesda hasn't, and I doubt they ever will. Unless Microsoft smells the potential money with all the franchise's creators, both old and new, under one roof, and decides to change their policy of being a hands-off owner in order to force them to work together nicely. This unicorn of a game that is New Vegas will never have a follow-up or be repeated again. Fallout New Vegas is just such a stunning case of success despite having just about every handicap as a developer one can imagine, but is still a deeply, deeply flawed masterpiece. Another one-of-a-kind game with so many lovable bits tossed into the meat grinder of video game history. With how badly the Fallout brand has been floundering of late, any hope of salvation rests on a sequel to this game, a sequel done right. You mark my words on that. It is telling that, at least it would seem, the best days of the Fallout are in its past, not its future. New Vegas is a game I love, but I will never complete. And as my years roll on, that is an even more certain fate for myself in this game. It will remain a problematic favorite for me. With Bethesda, like in Vegas itself, the house always wins, whether we like it or not. Thank you for listening.